Namaste and welcome to Urban Chatterati. This is Abhinav Prakash. And today, Abhijit Iyer-Mitra is here to discuss the ongoing clashes between Israelis and the Palestinians. So, Abhijit, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Abhijit, first tell us what is happening in Jerusalem and around that area, because we saw that suddenly the clashes started and both sides are accusing each other. One is saying that, you see the propaganda video saying the Israeli troops attacked the people who were praying there, and the Israelis say that there was a pre-planned attempt to instigate violence by the certain sections of Palestinians. So what happened?
Right. So, first, there's the foreign policy angle to it, where Palestinians know that they can get away with violence because Biden is in power, and you have all these crazy woke senators like AOC, that jihadi lady, I forget her name. What's her name? The Somali jihadi. Um,
Ilhan Umar.
that's the one. And Rashida Tlaib and people like that, who had zero impact or influence on the previous government, but they have significant impact and influence on this government. So first was the permissive environment. We knew this was going to happen the moment Trump lost the election, and a certain section of woke Congress women were enabled by Biden's victory. Number one. Number two, what exactly has happened? So this has been in the works. If you look at the last 4 years under Trump, there were almost no Palestinian protests, so to say, right? Uh, Under Biden, this is going to be a very regular feature. Mark my words, you're going to see this erupt every 1, 2, 3 months. And there is going to be significant pressure from America on the Israelis, not on the Palestinians. Now, this is a classic case, getting to the operational details. This is a classic case of the cluelessness of the Western media walking into a trap. I mean, we've seen how clueless they are with their India coverage. This is a classic case of their cluelessness across the board. It centers around a property dispute in an area called Sheikh Jarrah. Now, Sheikh Jarrah is the new name of this place. Till about 1860 odd, it was very much a Jewish neighborhood. It was one of the Jewish ghettos of Jerusalem. What happened was in 1875, a bunch of Jews, there are 8 homes under dispute right now. A bunch of Jews bought the title deeds to this home. They still have the documentation. Okay. After that, when it was the British mandate of Palestine, what has happened out there is that, like the British only liked a colonial police force, which is not to ensure justice. It is to ensure there is no violence so British extortion can carry out perfectly, which is what you see in India. It's the minimal required police force to crush an uprising, not to provide any justice or investigation or anything like that, which is, of course, the root of your Section 153 and all of that, that, the onus is not on the people rioting to stop rioting. It's on the fellow who has so-called instigated the riot through his words, right? So it's low cost, minimal effort policing as opposed to a law and order system. Now, in that kind of an environment, given that the Palestinians were becoming very politically active, the British just evacuated everybody, told all the Jews to get out of there. Right? So evacuees. They still owned, they never gave up their property. Since then, a bunch of families have come over, taken over this evacuee property, claimed this as their own. They do not have any documentation, no possession papers, nothing. Now, this has seen several rounds of litigation in the Supreme Court of Israel, where the people who own the properties have put up their property documents saying, look, we bought this for money. It is ours. It has to come back to us. And the Supreme Court said that is fine, but see, the point is these people have been living there for a while. So you can't get your property back if these chaps agree to pay you fair rent and they get a protected status, which is they're protected tenants. You can't evict them as long as they pay rent. Right? The Palestinians said no to that. We are going to continue staying here even though we don't have property documents, and we will not pay rent. Right? So what has happened in all of this is that you basically have a situation where the Supreme Court then said, look, you don't own this land. There is clear ownership with somebody else. It's not like you're the original settlers or anything like that. We have given you an alternative to stay on there by paying fair rent because the property belongs to somebody else. You are not accepting that. Therefore, we are going to evict you. It is a classic case of eviction laws. They've suppressed all this information and focused only on the racist eviction. Mind you, these people weren't even there before 1875. Racist eviction of the Palestinians, nothing racist, it's pure property law.
Yeah, but what happened? Why the clash started in that mosque?
Then what has happened is, this is the classic case of Achan. Now there is Biden and there are all these Democrats in power. So let us amplify our voice and start doing stuff. And so they have made this, like they used to in Barack Obama's time, they've made this into an issue and started rioting. And as usual, we know, just like the Kashmiris do, these people love to use children and old people and women as human shields. You go to an area where you can get maximum publicity. Remember, a crowd that pelts stones in the market is useless. But a crowd that pelts stones inside a mosque or pelts stones inside some holy place, like the terrorist takeover of the Hazrat Bal shrine in the 70s or 80s, and then again in the 90s, I think, or early 2000s, I forget when. All of that is done very specifically to gain publicity. So they've gone to the third holiest place in Islam, the Al-Aqsa mosque, started throwing rocks, whatnot, started rioting out there. And obviously the Israelis have come and they have to restore law and order. So that's what they've gone and done.
They were throwing stones on who?
On Israelis, on Jews, on Israeli police. There's a very clear video. They try to pass off this video. There's this Israeli guy just driving. They go try to lynch him, throw his car. That road, it's just under the Western Wall. It's between the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was arrested by the Roman police, and the walls of Jerusalem, right? It's that road between that area. You can actually see this guy who it's claimed he crushed 3 Palestinians. He was trying to back off. They went on hurling stones at him, tried opening his car door and tried to lynch him. And they basically forced his car off the road. And they were taking a very small frame and showing it. Thankfully, the Israelis immediately released the CCTV footage, which showed the entire thing happening out here. It has been a completely one-sided escalation by the Palestinians. Now, have there been some idiot Jews like that deputy mayor of Jerusalem and things like that? Yes. You tell me which society doesn't have its idiots.
Yeah.
Now, what the Western press, as usual, what it wants to do.
What did he do, by the way? What did he?
There was one of these protesters who was supporting the rock throwing, and he comes out and says, "I hope you get a bullet through your forehead."
Okay, so it's a classic case of having problem with someone's words, but not with someone's actual deed of violence, right? Just like in the case of Bengal, we are seeing the people have a problem with the statements made by Dilip Ghosh, but not actual killing by the other side.
For example, Twitter bans Kangana Ranaut for saying somebody should take Mamata Banerjee to task, but they allow Mamata Banerjee's minions to keep spreading nonsense on Twitter, saying this is a BJP internal fight, it's a TMC, it's a CPIM internal fight and nonsense like that. Right?
We know it very well. Even before the partition, Abhijit, we know it very well. The Congress is painted as the evil, and Muslim League is, which is actually doing violence. They both are equated, saying that Congress leaders were also making some statements.
Exactly. And so what the Western press, CNN, and all of these people did was they equate the mayor saying you need a bullet through your head with Palestinians actually throwing rocks at people, injuring people. They actually equate. If you look at some of the tweets coming out, they're actually famous so-called media personalities are equating Jewish crowds waving the Jewish flag at a small fire that erupted in the courtyard of Al-Aqsa with the actual Palestinians who set it on fire, set their own mosque on fire, use their own children as booby traps, use their own women and old people as booby traps. And if you actually look at the videos, the Israelis are trying to evacuate the Al-Aqsa mosque, pushing them out, saying, please get out, please get out. Well, they're not saying please, they're saying get out, get out, get out, and pushing them out. Why? Because these people are using human shields. And notice this is exactly what happens in Kashmir as well. If you look at the entire Indian Express coverage of Kashmir, have you ever found a bullet that actually finds a rioter? Surprisingly, defying all the laws of physics, the bullet does U-turns like Michael Schumacher's car, and invariably only finds the one innocent girl who was out shopping, innocent student who was out in the middle of class trying to buy cucumbers for her mother to cook. This is the classic nonsense that you have. Why? Because it sells. It's a surefire winner, because on one hand, the people who oppose this kind of coverage, they watch it just to get angry and tweet about it saying, what nonsense, how dare CNN write this crap? So they still get hits. And the people whose point of view it validates, they're like, see, this is what we've been saying all along. So it gets hits. So this false equivalence that these people do, it's a tried and tested old tactic to get hits. It validates one prejudice, it infuriates the other prejudice. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
So that's what these people do. But like, I think it was somebody, it was my dear friend Shalom Wald who told me this: to understand the Israel-Palestine dispute requires brains. If you're going to get into generalizations like that D movie actress, what's her name, who just called Israel a terrorist and an apartheid state, I don't know.
Must be some leftist, who else?
Yeah, I don't know. Some
Are
JNU.
you talking about that fake news and rumor monger Swara Bhaskar?
Yeah, that woman.
Uh,
So that creature,
she does it often.
that creature is graduated from JNU. She was so proud of her JNU education. She doesn't even know the definition of terrorism.
But that's
Terrorism,
what
by
JNU
its
is
very
ultimately.
fundamental nature, when a state carries something out, it is a human rights violation. A state cannot do terrorism unless it supports sub-state actors. State action is fundamentally not terrorism. She doesn't even understand that, and she apparently has a degree. It shows you the kind of trash that graduate out of JNU, the kind of trash. There should be an audit of who gave her degree, because if this is the kind of trash that gave her degree, then clearly they've given her degree in return for consideration. I don't know how much money they had to pay, because she's clearly not got the brains for actually getting a degree. But then clearly the professor in question also wouldn't have had much brains if he couldn't teach her the basics of basic definitional problems.
But she's like that. So I think 1 or 2 years back, there was a violence in JNU. Again, the left always does violence, just like in West Bengal. So 2 years back or 2.5 years back, there was election, there was violence. And she was spreading the rumor that ABVP has entered the campus with the swords and the jeeps, they're roaming around. She was tweeting all those things. So she's a classic case of what to say. I mean, if you say anything, then you are glorifying these useless people. But anyways, let's move on to Palestine.
But understand what it has done. This woman has been spreading blood libel of the worst possible Nazi kind.
Yes, she's a Nazi.
See, she is. She's a concentration camp guard. And I'll tell you why. She's in the same category as Joseph Mengele, because this was exactly the kind of trash that led to the Holocaust. Blood libel in subtle ways. Before, it used to be, the Jews are killing Christian martyr child, or they're capturing Muslim children to sacrifice on the Sabbath. Today, it's become, see, they're killing innocent children. And what is the intent of all of this? To create riots that leads to the killing of Jews in other parts of the world
Same what they
and
do with the
creating
Hindus.
hatred against Jews.
Same what she does with the Hindus after the Ram Mandir case, saying that, completely
Classic,
representing
classic.
the case and saying that,
She's your classic hate hag.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But this is,
Pure, undiluted bile. So, but see, she's just the symptom. This, understand, there is a whole well of absolute rubbish coming on the news, and it's all passive incitement of anti-Semitism. Because remember, neither CNN nor BBC, especially, of course, not Al Jazeera or anyone, reported on the root cause of Sheikh Jarrah. How is that not fake news? They went on saying it's based on the evictions at Sheikh Jarrah, but nobody gave context on what has actually happened at Sheikh Jarrah. Right? Just like they were doing in the Ayodhya case.
yeah.
Right? No context about the actual property documents, that people who own the property are being denied their property rights. So this is a systematic pattern that you're seeing that these people follow, and they do it without consequence. And then you have trash like this JNU woman and other trash like that, who spread this hatred deliberately. Mind you, they are not saying go kill Jews, but the subtext of what they're writing is go kill Jews.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what they did to the
This is
Hindu
what they do to Hindus as well. They
in
don't say go
Bengal.
kill Hindus, but the subtext always is go kill Hindus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the case of
Right?
CA, we have seen the same thing.
Exactly. So it's a very standardized pattern now.
So, but it seems that the conflict has now escalated a lot. So there have been so many rocket attacks on Israel as of now. I was seeing in the video, even now it's happening. The people are under attack in Israel, and Israel is also retaliating. So what will happen now? How it will unfold?
So see, this is where I think it was the former foreign minister of Israel, Abba Eban, who said the Palestinians never lose an opportunity to lose an opportunity. And what has happened is that they were getting all this media traction from the riots that they started. They lost all that sympathy with Hamas firing rockets. Now, Hamas thought it is going to support its Palestinian brothers by firing rockets. And now it's immediately become an issue of an external attack on Israel. And all the attention is diverted away now from uh, 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 the clashes at the mosque. So, in that sense, the way Modi uses Rahul Gandhi, that, anywhere Rahul Gandhi goes, Modi just can't lose. Israel uses Hamas in that sense. That wherever Hamas decides to poke its nose, Israel ends up looking good even when the situation is lost. So, on one hand, Hamas knew that its rockets would have no effect because the Iron Dome is superb. It's managed to intercept almost every single rocket that it came inside. So completely useless. But it has squandered goodwill. The Palestinians have lost whatever goodwill that they got based on fake news as well. Because now to go criticize the Palestinians when Israel is under attack upsets a lot of apple carts in the US.
But we see that in India, there's so many people who were trending India for Palestine, India stand with Palestine and all. And if you go and check, most of them were using all kind of fake pictures, fake videos, clearly photoshopped pictures. And we see the same pattern repeated in the case of Kashmir and other such conflicts around the world. But you also notice something more, Abhijit, is that the people who are very vocal on India's stance with Palestine are almost the same people who were peddling wartime Pakistani propaganda during the Balakot standoff,
Yeah.
demanding Nobel Peace Prize for Imran Khan, praising Pakistan, questioning your armed forces, almost just like reading handout from the Pakistani intelligence agencies. So, what to do about these people?
There's nothing you can do. See, it's freedom of speech, unfortunately.
Yeah,
We
so
don't
how to
use the
handle this?
double standards that the left does on their platforms citing freedom of speech, only as long as it doesn't upset them, right? So they have their basic freedom of speech. The thing is, you have to know who these people are and what they're up to.
Yeah.
And what we do is we make videos like this to inform people what they're actually up to. I can honestly tell you, Israelis don't give a shit about Indians trending India with Palestine. They don't have an inferiority complex, unlike us. The only opinion that they're actually concerned about is America's, because a lot of their military aid and their markets depend on America, right? With India, most of Israel has actually visited India. Probably a vast majority of the population would have visited India, and they don't go to the Taj Mahal and Jodhpur, Jaipur, and things like that. They instead go to places like Kashi, Varanasi, Mathura, and things like that, because even though they are Jews, they seek a certain spiritual thing out there. Or they'll go to Dharamshala and things. They'll smoke a lot of weed, have a good time, but they don't get into this Indian media narrative. They don't care about Indian Twitter. They basically feel a great sense of comfort being in the company of a Hindu Buddhist religious belt,
Mm,
which has never persecuted them,
mm.
right? So the Israelis really don't care. So these people can keep tweeting and things. At most, what's going to happen? That JNU bimbo is going to get about 20, 30, 40,000 new Palestinian followers. That's about it. Most of them will even be asking who, Swara who. So anyway, this is like Nina Harris. Nina Harris tweets something, and she a vacuous bimbo. She immediately gets about 300,000, 400,000 new Indian followers. Same here. It's just cheap publicity seeking, because she's a D grade actress. She can't really reach the top rung. So this is one way of stay. Some people hire PR agents. She uses Twitter. Great.
Yeah, but what about the Arab policy now? So we see that many influencers from UAE are actually kind of supporting Israel. And
Kind
what is
of.
Saudi Arabia?
They're very vocal. They're not kind of. They're actually being very vocal in their supporters.
No, I was talking about a wider range of people, not just few. Saudi Arabia, so that's also silent so far. What is the Arab policy now towards Israel and Palestinian conflict?
It's not just the Arab policy now. Remember, it's actually been the Arab policy since about 87, 88, and it consolidated in 1990 when the Palestinians supported the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. So if you remember, Yasser Arafat traveled to Baghdad and he validated Iraq's annexation of Kuwait.
Oh, oh,
He did, which tells you a
wow.
lot about their principles and morality and all of that.
Yeah.
And illegal occupation, when
Hmm.
they actually chapafied Iraq's illegal occupation of Kuwait. And what happens out here is all those countries turned against their Palestinian population. They're like, today, if you're supporting Iraq taking over Kuwait, tomorrow when Saddam Hussein marches into the Abu Dhabi or Riyadh or something like that, you'll support that as well. So they started launching a systematic campaign against their Palestinian diaspora in their country. Low level harassment, low level but consistent harassment, trying to kick them out.
Hmm.
And to a large extent, they have succeeded. You won't find too many Palestinians left in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and things like that. Most of them have been harassed out, because they didn't want a compromised population like this that would end up becoming a threat to themselves. Remember, Palestinians are a highly disturbed population. Wherever they have become refugees, they have caused significant problems. In Syria, they've caused significant problems.
Jordan.
In Lebanon, they caused significant problems, and nowhere have they caused more problems in Jordan, where they are a majority. You remember there was an attempt to take over the entire government and depose the monarchy, which nobody wants to talk about.
Which
And these are the people, yeah,
Pakistani army suppressed by killing thousands of Palestinians.
exactly. So the Pakistani army, Ziaul Haq specifically, was in charge of the troops who was in Jordan killing off Palestinians when they tried to rise up against the Jordanian king out there.
Hmm.
So they are a highly toxic diaspora.
Just like
And it's
Rohingyas,
really
you mean?
sad. It's really sad because a vast majority of them are actually really nice people who are displaced,
Yeah.
genuinely treated horribly by Israel, which we should be condemning.
Yeah, yeah.
But every single time it is that nasty, toxic minority that captures the narrative, that destroys, that has been single handedly responsible for destroying the Palestinian cause. And basically, today it is at the point, since the 90s, it's at the point where the unofficial Arab stance is we don't like what Israel is doing to our Arab brothers, but unfortunately, the Palestinians are more responsible for what is happening to them because they don't know how to negotiate, they don't know how to settle, they keep trying to palm off their corrupt politicians, their failures onto us. And we are not picking up the tab anymore. Ever since the official rapprochement has happened, the Arabs have turned much more pro Israel and they're like, you know what? You chaps are to blame for this, as in you being the Palestinians. They're refusing to condemn Israel.
Hmm.
Or if they put out a condemnation of Israel, it's just a pro forma condemnation where their entire troll army is supporting Israel, but they are just saying, oh, yes, we condemn Israel. One line condemnation, no details. That's it.
Just like they did with the case of in the case of Kashmir, right? Last time,
Exactly.
OIC will issue some statement, and that's it. That's the end of
That's
it.
it. And here's the thing, even there, if you look at UAE and Saudi Arabia, they said this is an Indian internal affair. They even refused to condemn it officially. So
Interesting realignments in the word, yeah.
and this isn't even a realignment. I think the Palestinians, it tells you so much about the leadership deficiency they have,
Yes.
the complete lack of a leadership that the Palestinians have or have invested in. Remember, Palestine hasn't held elections in what, 15, 20 years now.
Hmm.
So they're not even democratic. uh, uh, they haven't held elections. They've got a dunce leadership that's done nothing except dig them more and more and more into the grave.
Yep. So, one do feel sympathy for the Palestinians, but this is not something that is important in our life. So I don't know why this. I think if you take Israel and Palestine, it's not. It's like what percentage of the world's population? Together, they are hardly 1 crore people, and they can't hold the world hostage. It's not that in India you have to be outraging about something which has no meaning for you. So this is the point. So one feels sympathy for the displaced people, like Palestinians are displaced, but then we can't go and take a woke stand and start condemning Israel, which is one of our few friends in the world.
And herein lies the problem. I would say that the vast majority of Palestinians actually have genuine gripes and genuine concerns.
Hmm.
The problem is because they get so hyperbolistic and start supporting the worst kind of trash against the Israelis, you can never really speak up for them.
Hmm.
See, there are valid criticisms of Israel. There is a valid way to protest against Israel. Throwing rocks is not it. And
Agree.
if the rock throwers are the ambassadors of the Palestinian grievances, then I'm sorry, you can't be supported. Full stop.
So thank you, Abhijit, for
Imagine if the Palestinian leadership just says, nobody will throw a rock. If you throw a rock, we will expel you from our community. We are going to do mass satyagraha against Israel. We are going to go on hunger strikes against Israel. Everybody will come to Palestinians. You can't not support that kind of this thing, right? You're not inflicting violence on anybody else. You're using moral authority to shame people. Here you have no moral authority. Zilch, Golgappa. You are the aggressor. The Palestinians are the aggressor this time round. Make no mistake about it. The Palestinians are the terrorists this time round. They are aggressors this time round. They have attacked, grouped up and attacked innocent Israeli civilians repeatedly. And stone throwing is not non-violent. Let's get that through our heads.
Yeah, we know from India that stone throwing is not non-violent. It's actually very fatal. But we know how in India people justify normalize stone pelting. So not no surprise they're doing that in the case of Israel and Palestine as well. But Abhijit, thank you for talking to us and updating us about what's happening in the West Asia. And thank you, audience, for listening to us. Please subscribe to the channel and join as the member to support the channel. Thank you.
We'll wait.